Hi, I would like to welcome you today to our webinar on change management made easy/easier. Change management is never really easy, but we can do steps that can make it easier. I am Keith Greeno from Acima Solutions, and today what we wanted to talk about is just a overview on change management and how it is critical to help your businesses improve. Today's webinar, we're going to try to keep it fairly short to around 30 minutes. So we have a bunch of material that we're going to have to go through. So let's move to the agenda. So for today, what we want to talk about is what is really this change management? How do you define that? We're going to go through just quickly on an eight-step model, which is available for leading change. But once we've got through this model, then we want to just talk about what are the obstacles and barriers to change. Why is it so darn difficult to make it happen, right? Then what we want to just discuss is the differences in between what change management versus transition management for employees is all about. And transition is really the key to making the employees move forward. And so we're going to discuss the transition management a little bit, and then talking about the business system life cycle and just the various midlife crises that comes into these life cycles, which is pretty much universal in all companies. Then just briefly, we're going to go through the process to improve, and really how do you guys do it? And finishing up with the keys to success to do change management and questions. So let's dive into the definition, really. What is this change management? And really, change management, in a nutshell, is this structured approach. It really is a process. You try to change it so that it's a process of making things change all the time, because companies are always changing. In the world right now, the only thing constant in life is change. And so what we've got to do is try to get a process in place so that we can structure this in a format that we can make the changes over and over again, because we are continually in a state of change. And it's really this transitioning of individuals which is critical to this, and this is why I've got it highlighted here. Because what we're trying to do is this process is aimed at empowering employees to accept and embrace change. Okay? And it's our employees that need to accept it and embrace, because if they do not, the system is going to fail. And we don't want change to fail, because then our companies are stuck back doing the same processes that we were doing in the past. And this little funny that I've got here, no, we're too busy to improve, no thanks. Even though the guy's got some round wheels, I mean, these square ones just might be a little bit lumpy. And sometimes this is very much how some of our companies are run. So let's move into the next one. And this Kotter's 8-step model, and this is available on the web, and I've got some resources at the end of this presentation that you can go through and take a look at. But really, if we could follow these 8 steps, right, that he's got in here, and I guess there's a couple more, but really it's the 8. It's creating a climate, which is the urgency, guiding a team, creating the right vision. And visioning is actually one of the main features of making change happen correctly. But the point being is that we really need to make sure that we've got this climate of change. We need to enable, right, the organization, communicating, empowering, making sure we got short-term wins. Don't let up, make it stick. Okay, so this is great. But really, is it that easy? And the answer is no. Even if you followed this stuff, there's always these little landmines that we tend to step on as far as change. And so, okay, so here's these models for change. There's lots of stuff out there on making change happen. But what happens in real life? What is the real effect on this stuff? And so let's just go to the next thing, the reality of a system life cycle. And so let's say we go out, we explore and we're deciding, you know what, we've got project costing that's got a problem, right? We need to put in a project management system, a project costing system, so that we can really keep track of what's going on. So we explore what's going on. We go out and we say, hey, here's a project costing system, and we buy it. Great. Then we go and try to get the thing set up. We have consultants come in and help us set the darn thing up, right? And what happens is we tend to go over from this implementation, and things are painful in this implementation. I mean, this is not fun. And we move over to what we call normalization, where people start to use the system. They aren't using it very well, but they found ways to make it work, and they get numb to making it any better. And so what happens is we get into this midlife crisis, where all of a sudden we cannot get past this normalization. We're using the system but not using it very well. We never get to the optimization stage. At this normalization stage, you got to understand this is where companies start to go look for additional software. They're going, hey, my software solution does not work. It's a piece of junk, right? My employees think it's a piece of junk. I'm throwing it out. It may not be the software. It may be the way that you're using it. And it may just be a push to move up to this optimization, which will get you that. So understanding in this change management, what we're trying to do is manage the change so that we don't just get to this from the implementation to the normalization, but we actually move to the optimization of a system. And then again, things are always changing, and that's why this arrow is up here where you move back to the exploring again, because we always need to be kind of going out and saying, okay, now what happened in technology, what's happening in the world, and what do I need to change? Okay, understand that a year ago the oil prices were at $110 a barrel. Now they're at 35, I think. But the point is that is a huge change, right? And as a result of that, we have to make modifications to our systems to make it work. Okay, so let's just talk about the next step in here in this, which is the obstacles to change, right? So we know we're going to hit this midlife crisis. Why are we hitting that midlife crisis? And so let's understand is that this is from the Harvard Business Review, and it was a number of years back. But really, there's some stuff that leadership can actually influence. But really, what do you think the biggest change is here? It's employee resistance. We've got employees inside of our companies, and employees is including us. So understand is that, Keith Green, who happens to be, the CEO or the head of the company of ASEMA, right? That does not mean that there isn't resistance in Keith as well as in the managers, as well as in all of the other employees down the line. The employee resistance is critical to making these systems work. And it's not just the employees that are doing this, it's all of us, okay? The next one is this communication breakdown. Because we're saying, everybody should understand what's going on. I've already given them all of this flowery talk, right? So therefore, I don't have to tell them again. The answer is, guys, if we don't tell them again, this is 72% of the time the problem with why an implementation or why change failed. Now, they're talking about staff turnover, and so this leadership influence can influence, the ones in the circles, yes. But I believe it actually can do a little bit more than that as well. Right? Realistically, the leadership can actually make sure that we're getting trained. And I've got it in red, critical to success here. And that's because from our perspective, as a consultant that are coming in trying to help people change, trying to implement new systems, trying to make them better, trying to improve their processes, what we find over and over again is that the management of the companies come back and say, hey, our employees are way too smart. You don't have to spend that much time on the training. And this is a critical weakness, right? We really got to, try to get away from that. You've got to spend the time on the training, because other than that, what happens is it goes back and starts feeding this employee resistance, and it feeds this communication breakdown, because I really don't know how to use the darn system. And sometimes it can lead to this staff turnover, right? But understanding these are these obstacles that tend to come up over and over and over again. Think about your last project, right? We at ASEMA try to keep some control on this bottom on cost exceeding budgets. We do fixed pricing where we say we will install this kind of a system. We will fix this type of process, and here is the fixed fee to make that happen. There was no changes. We don't do estimates. And that's because if you watch a lot of the project management guys out there, what they do is, hey, we're going to give you a rough estimate, and guaranteed they're thinking about a $10,000 number and you're thinking about a $5,000 number, and you're exceeding costs and you're not happy, and sometimes you pull the plug on a project. So this is what can happen to change and what drives and slows it down. Okay. Let's go to the next slide here, which is talking about barriers as well. So this is another problem with change. What causes it, right? And so let's look at ourselves. Let's look at internally in our companies and understand is that there's management expertise. Do we understand all of our issues, and do we understand all of the potential management solutions that are out there? Taking into account all of the current technology, all of the current management processes that are available. Okay. On the accounting side, do we understand all of the issues with accounting? Do we understand that the new fixed assets have to be divided into multiple components because the new rules in accounting have changed? Do we understand all of the solutions that are available? In the technology world, right? Do we understand all of the issues? And do we understand all of the new technological advances that are coming that could solve the problem? And so again, how do we get past this stuff? Yes, we've got the internet. Yes, we can go out and look at it. But really the barrier to change is our expertise inside of a company to just make sure that we understand what's going on. And this is why sometimes you may want to look outside the company to get additional expertise. Then the other one being economic. And change is expensive. The bottom line is it costs money to improve. And the thing that it needs to happen is it's a continuous investment to be successful. Because if you say, hey, I'm going to throw $5 at it and it's going to fix it, the answer is no. You need to continually be looking at improving. You need to be continually looking at maintaining, keeping that economic money going so that you can move forward and get better at what you're doing. And then the last one here is this barriers to change is the human side. We humans understand that we should be doing stuff, right? But the problem is we tend to rarely behave in the way that we know that we should. And understand I've got this Jenny Craig on there. Why does Jenny Craig exist, right? The bottom end is we know darn well we shouldn't eat so much, but we do anyway, right? And so the bottom line with that is that how do we, to drive change, get an understanding that we as humans, right, are going to try it out and we're going to fall back into the rut all of the time. How do we keep out of that? Because it's not just the employees, it's the leaders, it's the managers, it's everyone. So if me as a leader fall into a rut, guess what's going to happen to my managers? They're going to do it even more frequently because you got more of them, right? And if they're not doing anything, what do you think is going to happen to everybody else, the employees, everyone in the organization? They're all going to fall into it. There's a good book written on this. It's called The 6 Disciplines Execution Revolution by Gary Harpst that just talks about barriers and how you can get past that kind of stuff. But understand that the barriers and the obstacles that are coming to change, right, this is why we're following into this normalization, this midlife crisis, which is happening over and over again. So let's just talk about this change stuff. What are we really going on? How do we solve it? Right? And so, as we said in some of the stuff up above, right, change starts with a vision. We have to have a vision, right? The problem is that if we do not have a vision, right, how do we ever give the direction to everyone so they all know which direction we're heading into, right? Because change can be prompted by external, right? You know, political, whether we change the parties, or economic, where all of a sudden we've got the downturn. As I said, oil prices go from 110 to 35. Or we got social, where all of a sudden now we've got the environmental groups coming out and they're saying, no, we are no longer putting up with fossil fuels, right? Or you've got technological, where all of a sudden we've got self-driving cars and we've got this stuff that's happening in technology, which is going to radically change. I mean, understand is that a number of years ago we had a successful operation called Blockbuster. It doesn't exist anymore because we've got the internet with streaming films everywhere. Okay? So that is change, but understanding what we need is a vision to be able to drive and get a direction so that we can change with it. Okay? So, in addition, this vision must be motivating to the employees. I mean, it has to be not only to the employees, but everyone in the organization to make us all go in the right direction. Okay? There's a very good book, again, that's written by Simon Sinek. It's called the Start With Why. And actually, if you want a Reader's Digest version of that particular book, there's an excellent talk that he gives on one of those TED Talks. It's on the web, but it's Start With Why by Simon Sinek. But the whole thing is this, is that what his premise is saying is that if you don't start with why, then people don't tend to follow. And if people are not following, then how the heck are you going to ever implement change? And so let's understand, is what is our leadership? What can we do as leaders of a company that are trying to drive change forward? So we need to make sure that this is happening. We need to make sure that everyone understands that everybody's got to be on the same page. This is from your executive people, this is your owners, this is everybody in the company. So the executive sponsors, these are the ones that are actually overseeing the main project managers. They're the ones that are overall responsibility is for the success of a particular change, right? They are the ones that have to sign off on the deliverables to make sure that you're solving the problem. They're the ones that have that clear vision and talk about goals, and they set the goals and they measure it to make sure that you're moving forward. So this has to start right at the top. And then the executive sponsors are actually driving the project managers, the champions, call them what you want, right? But these are really the people that are overseeing the actual project itself. And they are the ones that are actually bringing the vision to life. They are the ones that are saying, here's how I see how that thing is going to work, right? And then they're the ones that are also pushing it down to, well, I shouldn't say pushing it, but actually hopefully leading the team leaders, and the team leaders are leading the members that are actually taking care of the functional, the procedural stuff which is happening. But understand, this leadership role involves more. It's talking about employees and customers and vendors who are all affected by change. And it's critical that we involve everybody in this overall thing, and it's a clear vision that everybody understands that change is going to affect us. Okay? So let's just talk about it. Okay, so we've done this change. We've done it. We know that there's some obstacles to it. We've got that stuff. But let's just talk about what happens if we hit these obstacles, right? And we don't do any planning. And so the effective core of change management is this, is that you can see that we've got this emotional well-being. It's how happy everybody is, right? And then as time moves along. So we start off with a particular project. So let's say we're bringing in a new human resource system, right? And everybody's going, I really don't need it. It's denial. Then we go down and say, well, it's not really me. I'm mad that they're making me change. I'm trying to get another way out of it. I get this chaos and depression. I'm going, oh my goodness, now what have we done? They've thrown out all of our manual paperwork. Now they've got us trying to use a system that doesn't work, right? And then slowly we start coming back up, okay? With the resignation and I got to change. Yeah, all right, I can fix it. Maybe I can make it work with the acceptance, and then hopefully moving into this. The point being is that if we can reduce the amount of this drop, right, then we tend to move across. And it's not just change that we're talking about. You know, I mean, I think it was Eisenhower that once had a saying that said, all planning is essential, but all plans are ultimately useless. And I think he was talking about the D-Day invasion at that particular time, right? But the point is that we've got companies, right, and what they've done, like, and I'll just give you an example on this stuff. So we had a particular company that went through the change management. They did not do a good job. And so what they did is that they decided to get into change management without involving the main project managers and the guys in the field. They said, hey, the administration guys already understand everything that's going on, right? We don't need to involve these other guys. Well, what do you think happened is that the company put in a system. Yeah, the system was designed fine. There was nothing wrong with the actual functioning of the software and the procedures and processes. But when it hit the actual front-end guys, they went into this deep curve here, right? And all of a sudden, guilt, anger, I'm not using this piece of junk. And they never got to the resignation. They never got to the openness. They quit right down in here when they were at the worst point. And they said, this system will never work. I refuse to use it. System failure. And so understand, it's always capable of failing if you allow it to hit these problems. And the problem that happened, and we'll just move back a little bit onto some of this stuff, it's this employee resistance. It's this communication breakdown. We didn't involve everybody in it, right? We didn't do this human barrier. We just said, don't worry about it. We can solve it ourselves. The answer is failure. And we don't want failure with change, right? We have to have a buy-in from everybody, from these leaders, okay? So let's just go a little bit further on this and just talking about change versus transition. See, understand change can be extraordinarily fast, right? The oil price went from 110 down to $30 a barrel. Actually went a little bit lower than that. Oh my goodness, it's the shock, it's the denial. No, it ain't going to stay there. It's coming back up, right? But understand, anger, what the heck, those rotten other people are pumping oil. You know, it's the frustration, it's the moving. And so understanding is that transition or change can happen very, very quickly. But once you get in here, you get into this transitioning and moving across, and it can be much, much slower. And in this neutral zone where you're in between the old system to a new system, it is chaos. So if you're changing software, or you're changing procedures for your service management company, you're changing service or your processes for a project management company, or you're changing your services for your HR division, it is chaos in the middle, and we do not want to spend very much time in this particular area. So how do we get past that? Okay? And so let's just talk about the three phases of it, because really what it is again, it's these emotions and letting go, right? Understanding cannot be the old way. The old human resource system with paper where we're filling everything out, and we've got 150 employees, and we've got all of our schedules, and we've got all of our time off, and all of that stuff is done manually. Cannot happen because we got multiple locations and nobody knows what's going on. So let's let go of this old system as gently as we can. Yes, it's going to hurt a little bit. Yes, we're going to have to go through this neutral zone, which can be chaos, right? And we want to come out into this new beginning, which is an automated or a more automated system for HR, where everything's going to be on the computer and everybody's going to be able to look it up. Okay? But understand is that at each one of these jumps, Keith might be able to go straight from the endings and jump across the neutral over to the beginnings and go, hey, I love the system. Other people may just stay in this neutral zone and they're fighting you the whole time. You want to be able to take everybody across over to this new beginnings in time. And you'll see that this graph is showing that it may not happen to everybody. There may be some divesting of people because some of them may not want to change. And so let's just talk about the phases of this, okay? Excuse me. So phase one, this endings, letting go, right? In this, and this is this psychological side. This is that human piece that we're talking about on the barriers, right? In this phase, this is where your staff, your management must come to the point where they let go of the old situation and they understand we cannot stay here. We got to move on, okay? It's this graphic again. No, we're just too busy to change. We don't need to improve, even though these round wheels would make life way, way easier. Now understand, we know that we're going to be in this neutral zone, so don't downplay it. Don't say everybody, yeah, it's all going to be perfect. It is not going to be perfect to start with. Change is going to be disruptive, right? And we're going to all have to move through this neutral zone, right? And the longer it takes, the worse it is. So let's understand that we're going to have to make sure that everybody is brought up to speed with what's going on and make sure that they all stop using the old. We need to understand that they're going to go through this painful period. Let's try to plan for this stuff to move it through. And then let's talk about this new beginnings, where this is where you actually show this emotional commitment to that new system, to the new state, to the changing processes that you've got. Okay. So let's just talk about this managing transitions a little bit. See, communication, again, with individual change behavior is critical. Identify and understand who will lose from the change. Understand that if someone that has been in control of the HR files, the old manual files for years, if they are no longer going to have that, they are no longer going to be that head. They are going to be, this information is going to be available to everybody. So nobody has to go through specifically them all of the time. They need to understand what they're going to lose. And everybody's going to lose at least something, right? They need to understand what they're going to gain as well. Sell the problem, sell the solution. Talk to the employees, right? Understand that they're going to go through this neutral zone, which is going to be chaos. It's not going to be pleasant. Don't downplay it. Understand that you have to let people feel that as you're moving from one state to another state, people are going to be uncomfortable. They're not going to be happy with the system, right? And so regular meetings, again, it goes back to this communication, because this is what's moving everybody, understanding we're trying to move them from the endings to this neutral zone over to where the new system is going to work. This is this change management we're talking about, okay? And so to do that, see, it's always explain the why, share the vision, what it's going to look and feel like, give a detailed plan on a step-by-step on how we're going to transition everybody across, how we're going to move them from the old system to the new, right? Give everyone a part to play in that transitioning, because everyone has to make that jump. It's not just the management that's going to jump over here and try to pull everybody across, because you're going to have people screaming and kicking, and they're going to stay in here. They're going to try to stay on the old system. Okay? So I'm going to keep using my manual HR files because I just like them better. It isn't going to work. We're trying to do it all automated. It has to be over here. Okay? So realistically, what we're doing is this, is that we're trying to manage the change of a system by managing not just the change, but the transitioning of the people involved in it. Okay? And so let's get back to this same system life cycle. So really, what happens is this, is that we've explored, we bought, we implemented, we normalized, we're stuck in this thing, and we got this midlife crisis where everybody's saying, hey, this system doesn't work, I've got it kind of worked, and really it's not there. How do we jump up and optimize it so it's being useful as it possibly can be to the organization? Because it isn't necessarily we got to change accounting software. That may be something that has to be there, right? But really, that is all driven by requirements of the overall organization. And so how do we move past it? And so realistically, this is what we can do, is that this process to improve, and this is a model that we use internally when we're putting in and doing process improvement for companies, right? And so how can you deal with it? It's really, you have to sit back and understand. And this is this visioning again that we're talking about. Setting goals, making sure that you understand the current processes, diagnosing what the actual people, what your people out in the field and everywhere are doing, what their pain points are, where they're wasting their time. Analyze this stuff. Find out what is going on. How can we improve, right? This is me take some of that expertise that we're talking about, where we're actually understanding what's available in technology and management best practices, okay? Then prioritizing which is the best stuff, what do we need to address first because of the cost benefit and the value that really it's bringing to our organizations and or companies, okay? And then developing a plan. Planning is critical, right? Yeah, they might be useless, as Eisenhower said, right? But realistically, at least if we've got a plan, if something happens, we're going, hey, this is how we adjust around that, okay? And then on the implementation, making sure that we actually are measuring results, right? That we can see the steps and how each step is actually improving based on the plan, what's going on inside of our company and organization, and then helping people with coaching, because we're going to fall into these ruts, okay? So let's just go in and just talk about a process enhancement. So this is one that we did for another company a while back, but understand this is just an example to give you guys an idea on what we're talking about as far as process enhancement, okay? Because it doesn't have to be just the software. And so this was one where it was an oil and gas servicing company. They had these daily activity reports all being filed. They were done manually, right? They had approvals being done here. They had approvals being done here. They had approvals going down into the payroll to generate. They had approvals to go over to make sure that the invoicing had the right stuff in it, okay? A lot of approval processes. What it caused was invoices to take upwards of a month to be able to get out, sometimes longer. Payroll was always a big rush to try to get it done. And so what can you do about that stuff? Well, the process enhancements it involved, and yes, this was a little bit of technology that came into this thing, but on the next slide, let's just understand. You see, all of a sudden what happened is all of this information was now flowing into a central approval process where all of the rates and time and everything involved in invoicing, everything involved in payroll was all being done and approved once, okay? What it did is then the employee did the time that was in and approved by the supervisors and that, and then it flowed into the project costing so that your reports are all accurate. It gave the invoicing or the customer invoicing was generated, and it did all of the payroll generation for you. You can see the streamlining that's happening. You go back, you look at the 4 steps that were happening here. Now it's only 1 step. Way more effective, way more efficient. The company just gets better. So understanding what we're talking is this. Here's some resources as far as change. I know we've gone through this fairly quickly, and we'll go through the final one, which is the keys to success. But here's some great information from Ryerson's. This one is actually a very nice PDF document that they've written, and it's actually talking about change management from both change and transitioning, which I think is a very, very good way to look at it. Right? There's some other information as far as this William Bridges and Managing Transitions, which is a very, very good read. And some of the other stuff as far as Start With Why with Simon Sinek, and the Execution Revolution with the Gary Hartz. So let's just finish this off with what are the keys to successful change. So understand, guys, this is from the overview side, but you have to have a vision and describe change in as much detail as possible. Make sure that the management, the managers, the employees, everybody understands what's going, why it's going to be happening, what it's going to look like, right? Make sure that you're actually doing rewards, because as we move through this transitioning, right, as we're in that neutral zone, as we see these individual steps being signed off, give rewards and compensation as people are moving through there, because we want them moving through that neutral zone as quickly as possible. Be consistent. Understand that do not allow people to stay back in the old system while other people are having to change. Be consistent and make people move across, right? Short-term goals, and make sure people feel that they're moving forward. Because if you don't have smaller goals and steps where you can actually celebrate successes, which is talking about down here, then everybody's going to say, it's too big of a jump, I cannot make that leap. The point being is that we need to make sure that we've got these short-term goals that people can follow, okay? Comprehensive training program. Don't ever scrimp on the training on the system, right? It'll be probably one of your worst investments if you do that. Training is a huge investment to everybody because it helps everybody move forward. And then making sure that you actually develop a change manager role where someone's actually there to help people move across the endings to the neutral zone to the transitions, okay? Because what it does is it prevents us from going into this deep cycle, where things are not that good, right? This is not a good time. The emotional well-being of your employees and the whole company is not very happy if you're stuck into this bottom rut for a long time. Same thing with the neutral transitioning, okay? It's a rut. This is the chaos stage. We don't want to be there. Let's try to move from here to here as quickly as possible. Okay, let's just go back to this again then. And so let's talk about some of the don'ts. Don't explain change through a memo. Don't just do a model team and say, hey, these guys are going to do it. We're going to show you guys how great it is, and then we're going to try to move it across. Sometimes it might seem like a good idea. Usually, if you've done that, you've got this team that feels to be far superior to everybody else, and so it tends to make everybody jump off, resistance grows. Don't turn over change to an individual and say, you take care of it, I don't want to deal with it, right? Here's a critical one. Don't rationalize not communicating with the individuals or people, and I'm talking everybody, because there's a grapevine that's running through all of your organizations, and they're already hearing about it, and they may not be getting the right information. Never overpromise output during transition, because you're in that low period. You've got emotional people that are not moving across. The bottom line is this overpromising that you're actually going to be able to develop and deliver on stuff is just, it's ridiculous. It just cannot happen. Don't ridicule the past. What it is that you might be talking to the person that originally built that manual payroll or HR system. So don't say how stupid it was. Just sit down and say, hey, listen, this one is way better. Here's why it's way better. This is the information that it'll give us that's way better. Okay? And then this last one, don't make threats, and don't not care about the change that is going to have on everybody. There is going to be an effect. So now we'll finish this off with just the questions for our company. So again, we believe that people deserve systems that work. And we believe in using technology and management best practices as effectively as possible to make your businesses and organizations succeed. What we're trying to do is just help you with that transitioning and try to move you forward. Okay? And thank you very much for your time.